The bad news for British Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak came before breakfast. Consumer prices rose by 6.2% in February compared to the previous year. This is the biggest surge in inflation Britain has seen in the past 30 years. And even before his budget speech in the House of Commons on Wednesday afternoon, the Conservative Finance Minister was under increasing pressure to open up his painstakingly consolidated treasury and rush to help the British, who are groaning under the soaring cost of living. Sunak blamed the aftermath of the pandemic and the economic consequences of the war in Ukraine for the price explosion. The sanctions are not in vain, he said, emphasizing that people should know that we stand behind them. The Chancellor of the Exchequer announced a mix of tax cuts and direct financial aid for low-income families. By March 2023, UK fuel tax will be reduced by 5% per litre of petrol. Homeowners no longer have to pay VAT for energy-saving purchases or conversions. The European Court of Justice restricted this possibility in 2019. Thanks to Brexit, they now have a free hand, said Sunak to thunderous applause from his Tory group. In fact, the ECJ at the time objected to the British plans for violating EU law. However, the Chancellor of the Exchequer did not stop at emergency aid but announced further tax breaks. The aim is to raise the income limit above which income tax and social security contributions have to be paid. However, this relief of a total of £6 billion is overshadowed by the fact that Sunak wants to increase national security contributions and keep them unchanged by 1.25 percentage points. The additional income of around £12 billion should benefit the state health system. But where are the $350 million a week? Sunak wants to improve the depreciation options for investments in research and development by the fall in order to boost productivity. Small businesses should also benefit from higher tax allowances. And by the end of the 2024 legislative period, Sunak intends to keep his promise to reduce the basic income tax rate from 20 to 19%. That will cost £5 billion. And that should be a first foretaste of further tax breaks before the next elections. The pressure from his own party to relieve the burden on the people remains high, but Britain is heading for the highest tax burden in 70 years. The bottom line is that the next tax cuts announced by Sunak would only offset about a sixth of the previously introduced net tax increases the Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, has calculated. So Sunak has yet to earn his image as the Chancellor of the Exchequer of tax cuts, especially since he's repeatedly said to have ambitions for the office of Prime Minister. In the past few days, there have been numerous areas of friction between Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Chancellor of the Exchequer. Johnson, who was ailing after the Partygate, not only urged his ambitious treasurer to provide generous financial aid for the British, who are suffering particularly from the high energy and food costs. In view of the Russian aggression, the Prime Minister also demanded more money for defense and promised a rapid expansion of nuclear energy. The share of nuclear power in the electricity supply is to increase from the current 16% to a quarter by 2050. The plans of the Chancellor of the Exchequer are also made more difficult by the deteriorating economic situation. According to the OBR, growth is expected to decline from 3.8% this year to 1.8% in 2023. The OBR expects an average inflation rate of 7.4% this year. In the coming months, according to economists' forecasts, the rate of price increases could be even in the double digits. One reason for this is that energy prices will rise again by around 50% in April, when the government has to adjust its price cap to be changed to the changed market situation. The OBR does not expect the inflation rate to fall around 4% until next year. In addition, there is a mountain of debt currently amounting to more than 95% of gross domestic product or GDP. Nevertheless, Sunak sees scope for tax cuts and points to the sharp rise in tax revenue and the decline in new debt. We can guarantee the people of Great Britain economic security, promised the Tory minister, but at the same time warned that the situation of public finances could deteriorate significantly again due to geopolitical risks. Sunak refrained from siphoning off the high profits of the energy companies through a so-called windfall tax as introduced in Italy. It is evident that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has failed to recognize the magnitude of the challenge, said opposition Labour Party Finance Secretary Rachel Reeves. And so it's quite interesting that tax cuts are very close to the 2024 election, or the promises for those. So just saying. And I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.